squeeze in.
A very, very exciting day. I am here at Head Whisky with the legend and icon, Gillian Macdonald. I mean, you're the strongest master blender in the world.
Oh.
And now, congratulations for chairing,
co-chairing the committee. I know. It's I've only been in that role since Saturday officially, when I was actually over on Islay, and it was fantastic to make sure Jackie had a wonderful send-off on Ardbeg Day. And yeah, I'm thrilled to take it over with Bryony, who was part of my team for a very long time, and we're great friends, and we're looking very much forward to what it has in store.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, in my mind, in this lifetime, my question is, what do I need to know for my next round of how to become a master blender of an iconic brand? Brands.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could speak about a little bit how I got into making whiskey, and it was not really on my radar at all for a career. I did a chemistry degree back in the day. But I very much fell into the whiskey industry almost accidentally after coming back from backpacking for a year and needing to find myself a job. So my entry into the world was probably not the most obvious way of going in. I know that nowadays you can study your masters in brewing and distilling and do various qualifications that would probably set you up in a very a good trajectory, as it were. But my sort of learning was very much on the job, which I would highly recommend doing. So I would probably recommend, if you're wanting to get into a world of making whiskey and eventually go on to doing the sort of the nosing and tasting and the blending side, is to start off at a distillery if you can and get some hands-on experience and learn the process, because that's hugely important, because every single aspect of the process is super important, and adding and creating flavours in those parts of the process, you kind of need to know those bits, because then you can understand when you get to the end of the process where you're selecting your casks, whether they're cask driven flavours or whether they're front end production driven flavours as well. So I would say anybody who wants to get into the industry, if you're very keen, if you can get to work at a distillery or even a brewery to start off with, maybe, because again it's all flavour driven, and then I suppose just get yourself, if you can, a mentor or somebody who is already in that industry to get a bit of insight, and to go out and explore, have a lot of fun exploring all the options of whiskey that there are as well.
I have many questions about that, so congratulations for Smoky Verse.
Thank you.
I had the pleasure of tasting it with Tomo at Copper and Oak, but that has a very, very unique mashing, right? The high gravity mashing. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. So for the Ardbeg Day releases, we generally try to put a whiskey out into the world that's different from our core range. It's still got to be recognisable as Ardbeg, so still going to have that lovely peaty punch to it and all the balance of flavours that you get with Ardbeg. But what we did specifically for Smoky Verse was we changed just one part of the process, and again this was at the front end of the production, and it revolved around the mash tun, as you've already mentioned there. And so we laid this spirit down a good number of years ago, and we've done a number of trials at Ardbeg that have resulted in special releases. This one was inspired mostly by a little bit of research that we've done on paper, whereby we had looked into what high gravity mashing did with regard to accentuating the flavours within the whiskey. So it basically means that you end up with slightly different fermentation conditions, due to having a lot more sugar in your mash, and as a result the yeast then, when it starts to feed off that sugar during fermentation, produces a whole host of extra fruity, juicy estery flavours. So that's what was the inspiration behind it. We had to consume quite a number of high gravity beers as well as research for it.
So is that the proportion of grain to water, or the type of yeast?
No, that's it. It's the proportion of grain to water, so that's exactly right. So you'll be familiar with the ingredients for making whiskey: water, barley and yeast. So we start off with our lovely barley, which as always was peated to at least 55 parts per million for Ardbeg. That was then processed through the mill, so that's the point where the grain is opened up to allow us access to the starch within that grain. We then put it into the mash tun, which you can imagine is the large sort of saucepan shaped cylindrical vessel at the distillery, and this is the point where we decided to make the change. So we did, as you mentioned there, we added less water to the mash tun, and as a result then we almost super concentrated up those sugars that we were extracting, and as a result of that we had a much higher gravity mash. So the gravity is almost the measure of the amount of sugar that you have in your wort, which is the sugary solution that goes then into the fermenting vessels. And the higher the number on that, the higher the gravity mash. And anything over 1070 is considered a high gravity mash, and we were well over that.
1070 for
that's the number. So we're normally around about sort of 1085, 1056, 1058 normally for a mash, which is basically the concentration of the sugar to water ratio.
Yeah. And then how does it interact, how does it change or impact the interaction of yeast with the
So
sugar?
the next stage then is going into our gorgeous wooden washbacks that we have at Ardbeg, and the yeast then feeds off that sugar to create alcohol and all these flavours. On this occasion, because we had so much more sugars in there for the yeast to feed off, the conditions of the fermentation were different, and it really did promote the formation of these really high fruity esters, and that was really different from our standard production. And then when we distilled that spirit over, we saw a difference even at that stage of the new make spirit, and then we matured it in. Yes, we then chose to mature it in ex-bourbon casks. And we chose to use quite a high proportion of second fill bourbon casks as well, so to allow what the change that we made at the beginning to really shine through and not be dominated by the wood. So it's been sitting, maturing, and we've been tracking it all the way, and we were thrilled to see that it was going to be coming out for this year's Ardbeg Day, and we selected it because we thought it's just at that sweet spot. If we let it go maybe on any longer, the wood influence will start to sort of dominate and kick in, and you won't necessarily still. Yeah, so we've got some Ardbeg Smoky Verse here, which is this end here. Yeah, so then we go from left to right. And yeah, so we're thrilled, and we had a wonderful day on Islay on Saturday celebrating Ardbeg Day. So there were lots of folk dressed up, embracing the space theme that we had.
So here's a confession.
Yeah.
I love whiskey. My nosing and sensory experiences, I just feel, are not good enough. Can you teach me how to do it properly?
Well, one thing I'd say is don't judge yourself by anything. You have a nose and you have a tongue, and you'll be doing absolutely fine. So I wouldn't give you any pressure to be doing it in any specific manner. What I would suggest is if you're ever nosing whiskies, to keep your mouth open, because that means that the flow through is an awful lot better, and you're probably going to pick up an awful lot more flavours. When you first approach the glass, I mean, unless you know exactly what the strength is at, I always approach it with caution, because you never know what strength it's going to be at as well. Well, obviously you will if you've read the label, but it's always worth to approach with caution, just to give your nose a little bit of time to adjust. And then beyond that, then it's just a matter of trying to pick up what exactly you can detect in there. Sometimes it's worth adding a couple of drops of water to the whiskey, because it does change it, and again, everybody works at their own preference when it comes to strength as well. I actually struggle at very, very high strengths. I actually bring it down to sometimes quite lower strengths as well.
So that you can get a better feeling of
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And 9:30 in the morning is always a good time.
Exactly. Somewhere it's 12 o'clock.
For sure.
So yeah, have a little bit of a nose, and comparing it to Ardbeg 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still recognisable. You still get the citrus notes in there, but I'd say the dominant ones are the more tropical fruit flavours.
Sure.
Got a little bit of ripe banana in there, a bit of peach, a bit of melon, and that's again all been accentuated by this high gravity mash. And yeah, you'll probably get more of the peat when you taste it and swallow, because again, the fruit forward dominance maybe masks the peat impact when you initially nose as well. So I'm a little bit of a taste.
Thank you so much.
And well, lovely to meet you. Oh yeah, and when you breathe in afterwards, there's undeniably, you get those lovely layers of smoke, and you even get that little bit of nice sort of savoury saltiness in there as well,
so which is a nice savoury, and then comes the smoke at the end, which is Perfect breakfast.
It is indeed, and it's a relatively elegant whiskey, this one, because of those dominant fruit flavours in there as well. So it's a gorgeous one. We're really, really proud of it, and proud of the team who helped us produce it at the distillery as well. Because every time we go in there with our crazy ideas to do something different for production, they're always very welcoming and very accepting of us, and are quite happy to work out all the little things that get thrown up as a result of us coming in and changing things up. So the team at the distillery are just fantastic.
So take us through that process of how do you choose a committee bottle from concept to store?
Yeah, I suppose a good example of one is the most recent one we've just released, which is Ardbeg Eureka, and that actually involved the committee quite heavily. Normally it's mostly sort of the whisky creation team that do the selection for the releases. On this occasion though, on Ardbeg Day 2 years ago, we invited about 100 committee members to Ardbeg, and we put them into this sort of little scientific experiment where we gave them some cask strength. There was 5 cask strength whiskies. We didn't tell them anything about them at all. We got them to just nose them, have a big discussion amongst themselves, and we gathered lots of information from them for tasting notes, and they wrote down amazing amounts of rich material, which we then went on to use. And we also asked them to vote for their favourite one out of the 5 as well. So on that occasion, the committee actually sort of kickstart the process for us, and the one that was voted the highest out of that little experience, we then took back to the lab and then worked on further to create Ardbeg Eureka.
What do you do in the lab? I want to be in the lab.
You want to be in the lab? The lab is lovely. So the lab has got, instead of very large finished bottles, it's got lots of small miniature bottles. So the lab is used in 2 parts really. So my role is split into 2. One is very much the quality of the core range for both Glenmorangie and for Ardbeg. So we'll have samples sent in for bottling batches that have been put together, and what we're doing there is we're assessing those against the benchmark samples and giving it the okay to be released for bottling. So we're very much lining up 2 samples, doing a compare and contrast, and 2 members of our team need to do that before it gets released from the distillery. So that's how we put together future core range editions or future limited editions. So we have the individual small samples from the cask sent to us, and then we make up composite samples of the same type of cask, and then on a very small scale then we take little samples out of the composites and we make up a few different bench blends just to have an idea of how those different casks combine together and at different percentages what those flavours are going to give us. And then we nose them, taste them, have lots of discussion, and slowly but surely we'll play around with those percentages until we hit the jackpot and we decide that everything is sort of come together in the best combination possible, and that then is in theory the recipe for whatever that edition is going to be in the future.
So what's the life cycle of that? Is that 9 months or a year?
So the things that we're working on, I mean the life cycle for whiskey is long anyway, as in, you know, certainly for things like Smoky Verse, I mean that started like 10-15 years ago, when with the idea and then the actual getting the process itself done at the distillery, and then obviously we've got to let it sit and mature by law for at least 3 years in wood, but then of course it then comes down to flavour. So the timeline to get Smoky Verse has been in excess of 10 years. The actual point once we've decided that that's going to be the one that's going to be released, we generally work alongside marketing on that for maybe 1.5 to 2 years in advance.
Wow.
So we'll then relay information over to marketing and all the details about how we've come about that. We give them detailed tasting notes, and we give them as much information as possible, because sometimes, and certainly for Ardbeg, it's got a lot of humour in the brand and a lot of quirkiness, and sometimes it's little maybe words that we've mentioned which have been part of the production process that have then gone on to either be the names of the product or inspired at the theme. So in this instance it was the high gravity, the measurement of the gravity, and that then has spun off into space and the Smoky Verse and everything. So we then sit down with them, and then they then go off and develop the story, packaging and name, and then make plans to work with the markets for launching as well, and put together all the educational packages and things.
So what goes in your mind when you're nosing a new new make or for either of the lines or the brands.
Yeah.
What's the process that you're going through?
So we within our team, we nose and taste the new make spirit every week at the from the distilleries. They send them down to us, and again, that's just to check that all the parameters and flavours are exactly as they should be, and that the new make's being produced within the specification that we're after. When we're nosing and tasting things at the other end of it, once it's been matured, we're looking for to ensure that the quality of what we're tasting and nosing is good enough to be put in a bottle and to, you know, have the name Ardbeg on that label. So our team is very much focused around the quality elements of both the core range and to make sure that every time somebody picks up a bottle of Ardbeg 10, it's going to be exactly as they hoped it would be, you know, rich in smoke, rich in all those citrus, lemon and lime flavours, all those herbal flavours, that sort of smoked fish, that smoked bacon, so that all those flavours are in there and it's recognisable. And then sometimes when we're working on more experimental batches, it is just then trying to discover what's in there, try to recall, you know, from your memory, either, you know, it might evoke certain memories from childhood or descriptors really. So yeah, it's trying to put into words what you're nosing and tasting, so that then that information can be conveyed over to whoever needs it, whether that be marketing, whether that be, you know, consumers. So yeah, it's an exceptionally fun process, and I love the fact that it's a bit of a mixture between like an art and science really. So we have an analytical lab as well at our facility, and we can gain lots of information from that. But ultimately, the most important part is how it's going to nose and taste, because that's how you are going to be nosing and tasting and enjoying it at the other end. So that's the ultimate test.
So you're looking for consistency and variety.
Yeah, well, consistency for core range, so that consistency and quality all the way, and then the variety part is the other half of it then, where we can introduce a few little quirky flavours or changes.
And even within the variety, you have to keep the core and the heart of Ardbeg.
Yeah, exactly. It's still got to be recognisable. Yeah.
How do you keep it fresh? How do you innovate? Well, Ardbeg has done the impossible of creating a niche audience, but also becoming the most popular with the wider population, which is, to me, brilliant.
Yeah.
How do you maintain that balance of keeping both audiences happy, those that are looking for variety, those that are looking for
tradition, sort of, and yeah. Well, I think it is a balance, and I think that's the only way to really approach it. I think the number one priority for our team is the core range. You know, that is what we have put out there as the best representation of what Ardbeg can achieve. And certainly Ardbeg 10 being the epitome of that. When you pick it up and nose Ardbeg 10, you're literally transported to Islay, and Islay is actually in that glass, and Ardbeg represents everything that is. So yeah, that's hugely important to us. The limited editions that we do then, we do with purpose as well. So our team is very familiar with how to make whiskey from start to finish and all the various stages. And we're always looking for, within those conditions and within the Scotch whisky rules as well, of course, is to see where we can make one change that will produce a different flavour. So that's a really fun part of the job and a little bit of a challenge. And the consumer, I think, is always after something that is different as well. So a lot of the time when we're out and about, everyone asks us, one of the first questions they ask us is, what's new? Yeah, and it's like, well, you know, we haven't got like a tap which you just turn on. These things, some things take, you know, a lot of time. So we can play around with different cask types, different combinations of cask types together, and front-end production. But we really do try to do it with purpose, and also continue to, you know, keep the fun element, the humour element, and things in Ardbeg as well, because that's important to us. As a team, we have a great deal of fun when we're working on Ardbeg. Yeah, it's a wonderful whiskey to be part of. So yeah, we want that to also then be conveyed out and into how it's received in the big wide world as well.
So you've worked with two of the largest masterminds in your time in Penderyn.
Yeah.
With,
Dr. Jim Swan, yeah.
And with the fantastic
Dr. Bill, two doctors.
What are the key lessons that you gained from them?
Well, I've gained a huge amount from both of I class them as my mentors, really, and certainly Jim in the early days when I first started, having walked into the world of whisky knowing absolutely nothing. He guided me through stage by stage in a very methodical order and a very structured way, and taught me really the skills that I had that I didn't really probably realise was the sensory aspects of it. And I worked under his wing for 8 years at Penderyn and shadowed everything he did, and he was the one really that got me interested in the maturation side of things, and also how to describe flavours. And with that as well was imprinted was the element of quality. You know, if you're going to be putting your name to an edition or anything that's going out the door, you know, quality cannot be compromised at any point. And again, even just to have the Ardbeg or Glenmorangie name to go on it, that's something that Bill has since instilled again, since being with Bill for the last 13 years working in his team, is that quality is paramount. And that's the number one priority for our team as custodians at the moment, to ensure that everything that leaves our facility is the best it can possibly be. And then the other element I would say, certainly from Bill, is the ability almost to communicate very technical things sometimes, but in a fun and inviting way, almost the storytelling aspect of it. And if you've ever done a tasting with Bill, he's very good at engaging with people and bringing something to life as well. And so, I think I've learned a fair amount on how to do that off him as well, and they've both been wonderful mentors for me.
Yeah, it's a privilege for both of you. So Islay peat has been really developing. If you taste the peat from the 70s, it's not the same as the 90s, and the same as the 2000s. So how do you see, what's the future of Islay peat?
It's such a part of Ardbeg, peat, and obviously when they started drying their barley back in 1815, they just used the fuel that they heated their homes with and did everything else with. So it was a choice made not through any crazy marketing scheme, but just a part of their way of life, as it were. And so it's still very important to keep that. We have an environmental policy within the company, and even within the Scotch whisky industry itself. So we're part of the Scotch Whisky Association peat group. It's like a focus group, which is all around the sustainability element of ensuring that we've had Ardbeg going for over 200 years. We want it to be here for the next 200 years, so we're very invested in ensuring that that does happen. The amount of peat that the whisky industry uses compared to other industries is absolutely tiny. I mean, it's less than 1% of what's actually taken out of the ground is the Scotch whisky industry. So you get a lot of the flavour in there, but actually it's coming from a relatively small source. We need to ensure that everything that we do going forward is sustainable, and that's a huge part of the Glenmorangie's company sustainability ethos, as it were.
Yeah. So, what is your favourite Ardbeg?
My favourite Ardbeg? That's a tough question. It's like trying to
that you have worked on and that you enjoy.
Oh, okay, that's a good one. Well, I'd have to say Ardbeg 10 is probably my go-to favourite. It is literally, as I mentioned earlier on, Islay in a glass. It transports me back to standing on the pier and just being at the distillery. So to me, it's super special. I think there's been some wonderful limited editions that we have done in the past. It's been really good fun to see a lot of those come out as well. I really enjoyed the Smoky Verse doing this, but I think Eureka was a really special one as well because it was so interactive with the committee and it was really driven by them. I also really liked Fermutation as well, which was out a couple of years ago, and that was all down to a broken down boiler back in 2007, which resulted in a 3-week long fermentation, which was
broken down.
And they couldn't get parts of the island, and as a result, the fermentations were just left to run wild for 3 weeks. And instead of
the same distillate,
it was the fermentation. It was And so it was processed through the distillery, and then a certain number of years later we tracked it through, and it was really quirky. It's like almost like a sour mash almost. So that was pretty special to work on as well. But I just find all of them so wonderfully special, to be fair. I really am privileged. I really am very lucky to work on such an iconic whiskey.
For sure, I do think it's an art as well as precision. To be able to hold to such high standard, and again, really satisfying the niche as well as the core. So it's thank you.
No, not at all. No problem at all. It's my pleasure.
Is there anything I didn't ask that you'd like to mention?
I don't think so. What's your favourite Ardbeg then? I'd probably be interested in knowing.
Well, my first one was wee beastie.
Okay, right.
And I really enjoyed the wee beastie. That was like my connection.
Oh, okay. That was your entry in.
Yeah, that was my entry. My current favourite.
Okay.
Animal
Supernova, Hypernova, yes.
Just,
super smoky,
I can't open it.
Yeah. Oh, an anamorphic there. Excellent. Oh, that's brilliant to hear. I'm thrilled.
Thank you.
I love the fact you just have them in your bag. Oh, I see. Excellent.
Glitter Sharpie.
Oh, how glam.
Just in case. Like having to walk around with it, you know.
Yeah, that's like me. I've always got whiskey in my bag, to be fair, as well.
So thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for coming to meet me. It's been a pleasure.
No, and thank you for bearing with my complex technicalities.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
Honestly, I have no issue at all with that. I'm thrilled to have met you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording.